So last Friday, I got coffee with one of my good friends, and I know her through work because she used to be my colleague, and we both work in tech right now. So she was telling me about how she was doing, how actually a lot of the teammates were a little bit demotivated and tired, and she said, I feel like the whole team has kind of been quiet quitting. And I asked her, what is quiet quitting? I actually have never heard of it before. She's like, girl, let me tell you. Hi everyone! Okari to my channel, this is Sakura. I'm a Japanese American girl living in Tokyo, and I have been working in non-tech roles in tech companies for all of my career. And let's talk about quiet quitting. I think this is really important to talk about because this is kind of a huge phenomenon that's happening at this moment, and my friend kind of described it as like phase 2 of the Great Resignation. So I wanted to address it not only because it's important for work-life balance and work-life in general, but also in the context of the tech career industry as well. So first and foremost, let's talk about this term. What is quiet quitting? So quiet quitting is essentially just showing up to work and doing the absolute bare minimum to get by. And after doing a little bit of internet searching, I found out kind of the two main reasons why people do this. The first reason that a lot of people talked about is using quiet quitting as a way of protest. Now, there's no one saying, I am going to quietly protest by quietly quitting. Obviously, no one's doing it like that, but I saw many examples of people who feel like they were wronged by their job. For example, putting in time and work and effort into giving everything into a company only for them to not get recognized, not get promoted, and they feel like it's kind of like useless to actually keep working hard. So they feel like the work has wronged them and they don't really see a point in working hard because it doesn't really have any positive outcomes. I think the idea is like if you don't put your heart into it, you kind of protect yourself from feeling either disappointed or feeling other negative emotions because you're just not invested anymore. The second reason is actually not as talked about from what I've searched on the internet, but actually from my personal experience, including like my own experience quietly quitting and also seeing the people around me. Basically using it as a method of self-preservation. So you're probably just so burnt out and you have such a whack work-life balance, or you just don't like the job that you're doing so much that you have to literally detach your brain from the work to do the bare minimum just so that you don't have to suffer emotionally or physically or mentally anymore. You just cannot put that investment in, or else it's actually a detriment to your own health. That's a method of self-preservation that unfortunately sounds a bit dramatic, but honestly I have seen so many people, again including myself, within the tech culture. So why are people quietly quitting? This is something that has always been there, it's just that there hasn't been like a coined term for it. But let's talk about maybe some of the recent things that's been happening that has triggered more people to quietly quit. For a really good chunk amount of time in the last 10-15 years, and myself being a millennial, I think that we have focused so much on hustle culture, about working hard to achieve your dreams, and if you haven't achieved your dreams, it just means that you haven't worked hard enough. So you need to hustle, you need to be productive, you need to wake up at 4 a.m. and do the billionaire routine, blah, blah, blah. Let's shut that out for a second. I think people are starting to realize that while hustle culture is something that can help you achieve your goals, and obviously, yes, if you want to accomplish something, it doesn't mean that you can get there easily. You need to put the work in. I feel like it has been taking it to the extreme where it's so prevalent in not only our like work culture, but in social culture as well. Like people kind of look down on you if you're not working hard, if you're just doing the bare minimum. They just don't see why you can't work as hard as they do. So I feel like it's come to a point where it's so extreme that the world balance, now that it's to this extreme, that we just need to start moving backward into the more neutral and medium part of this balance. We've worked way too hard, way too much right now. So that I think is like one of the biggest things that I think is happening, is that this quiet quitting is kind of an antidote to this hustle and productivity culture that we have created over the last decade or so. Another reason why could be very, very obvious, but it's actually due to the pandemic. after people realize that, working from home, they're like, oh, this is actually a way of working that we've never seen before. Oh, I can have time with my family. Oh, I actually have time to think about what I'm doing and what I want to do in my job and in my future and what gives me meaning. Because people have that space and time during the pandemic to really reflect, people are realizing that it's actually not all that to make work your everything. That seems very obvious right now, but I think if you're really in that work, and as I mentioned, hustle culture, you don't really realize that that's more of a choice, and you see that, okay, I don't actually have to work that hard to get things done. And kind of on top of that, let's talk about what happened during the pandemic, right? So, for example, in tech, where I've been working in this industry for about 6 years now, we talk always about these perks and amazing things that tech companies do, right? Like they give you free food and free snacks, and you have time off, and you have, a nap pod, and you have all these perks and things that happen at the office that when the pandemic said, hey, no, y'all are working from home, all of a sudden you were stripped off of all the benefits and the things that you had, and you realize that, oh, now you're just left with work. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe that you actually haven't been in a good working environment for a while, but maybe being able to talk to your coworkers and socialize and other aspects of the job. Since you've been working from home or not been able to do those things, you realize that, oh, I have been working in a toxic environment. Oh, my manager is actually really, really toxic. It can't even really support me in the things that I want to do. So peeling back all the other factors that had, in your work are now gone. So now you're just left with the bare work, and you have to think about, oh, this is what I'm stuck with. So there are, I think, plenty of, reasons, but I do think like the burnout, the antidote to hustle and productivity culture, and seeing work for what it actually is are sort of the main reasons that I've observed myself to be the reason why people are quietly quitting. So quiet quitting has no boundaries, how we say it knows none, because it can be, very general to any type of field of career or industry, etc. But since I've been working in tech for the last 6 years, I feel like this is where I can add the most valuable insight or personal input. So let's just talk about it here. Let's talk about quietly quitting in tech. Tech culture is very interesting, because I feel like it definitely adds to why quiet quitting is very prone there. And that's because burnout itself is very prone there. So one thing is about expectations. In the companies that I worked for, and also from other companies that I heard of that my friends work for, usually, let's say in a performance type of environment, they say that we have such high expectations that if you meet expectations, that is like a really good rating. So they say okay, you imagine putting in all this time and work just to say that people say hey, you just met expectations. But people tell you, managers tell you that that's actually a good rating. So you almost kind of feel gaslighted to think oh, I guess my best is average. Also, another big thing that I realized is people talk so much about imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome is when you feel like you're not good enough because everybody else around you feels like they're smarter than you, they're better than you, that you feel like you're kind of being fake in this world of perfectionists and amazing people, that you just don't feel like you belong. And why do you think that happens? It's because of these high expectations that people have of us. And that's also why, even though it could be a lot of pressure and a lot of negative feelings associated with it, it's also why I feel like tech companies can succeed, because if you put these types of people in one environment to kind of I wouldn't say outdo each other, but to push each other to keep just doing more and more, you're gonna get really high productivity and even sometimes innovation from that, right? You don't know, but that's what I assume happens. So I feel like that's also part of the culture, that there's always going to be more to do, that there's always going to be someone better than you, so therefore you must just step up your game if you want to play in the game still. The ironic part of it is that we actually also, in the culture, talk a lot about burnout, talk a lot about wellness, right? For example, a lot of tech companies give you a lot of benefits, for example, a stipend for going to the gym, paid time off, etc. And say, hey, it is your responsibility to make sure that you are maintaining your well-being while doing your work. And I'd like to advocate by saying that that's definitely something that is really important, that I have personally taken a lot of advantage of while working at tech companies. But I can also say that for some some other people not like me, it almost kind of adds a weird layer of complexity because they feel guilty taking time off or doing things, or it's kind of, again, expected to be at 100% all the time. So like when you're not, you kind of feel like you're not doing enough. So even though these perks and benefits may exist, a lot of people are not truly feel like they're able to exercise those benefits and advantages simply because of the culture itself. This is something that I think can happen or people will do at one point in time, just in ebbs and flows, right? Like there's sometimes moments in work where you feel so passionate and so happy and fulfilled that you work really, really hard, and at other times you reach a low that you just have to do it to self-preserve or protest in your own way. And I feel like it's not like a type of person that quietly protests. Like every person has those ebbs and flows, and it's totally okay to do that. You know why? Because if you're working at 100% all of the time, guess what? That means that that's not your 100%. That means that that's your 70%. So you don't want to overdo yourself to like always be doing 100% because that's just not sustainable. First of all, it's not healthy, and you do not absolutely have to be at 100% all the time. It's just not possible. And if you feel like you're quietly quitting because you want to change jobs, first of all, I actually made a video recently about how I changed careers twice, and kind of my advice on how to pivot, so please feel free to give that video a watch if you're interested in that. But there are some solutions to, I feel like, quiet quitting, because quiet quitting is definitely not a long-term kind of thing or action, right? Obviously, changing a job is a really, really big one. Another thing is, in your current work, maybe it's just the fact that you need to build firmer boundaries with your work-life balance in order to help you kind of like get back to where you need to be to feel healthy and okay. Maybe you just have a toxic work environment or toxic manager in general, so maybe switching internally to a different team may help. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to make sure that you are able to find something else that makes you feel like you don't have to quietly quit. So don't give up. Don't feel like this is the end. Don't feel like this is like you for the rest of your life, because it doesn't have to be if you don't want it to be. Kind of on this note, I also realized that not everybody wants to climb the ladder. And again, this is prevalent in tech culture, but I feel like everybody just cares so much about career development, self-development, and I do as well. But not necessarily everybody wants to climb the corporate ladder, and you know what? That is completely okay. Like, it's completely okay to just have a life where you go to work, make enough money to live a wonderful life outside of work, because work is not your family, work is not your number one priority. Your health and your loved ones and taking care of them and enjoying life should be, or in my personal opinion, like, should be number one priority. So like, you should also accept that other people won't feel the same way as you. That's it. That's my experience on quiet quitting, what I think about it, what it is, why people do it, what it looks like in tech, etc. If you have experiences, either yourself quietly quitting or seeing other people quietly quitting, I would love to hear your experiences down in the comments below. If this video was interesting to you, please feel free to give it a thumbs up. As I mentioned, my name is Sakura and I live and work in Tokyo, so I talk a lot about my career, my non-tech career in tech companies, as well as do lifestyle videos and vlogs about my life in Japan. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope to see you in my next one, and please enjoy the rest of your week. Bye.